So we're here today with Gail Titchener. Gail Titchener runs I Am Runner, which is a women's running club specifically for menopausal runners. Is it? It isn't.
Yeah, for those in and around menopause, yeah. We
Yeah,
do have some younger runners, but most runners are kind of mid-40s to mid-60s.
yeah, great. Well, why don't letting you take the floor? Why don't you tell us, a bit about your background, your story, who you are, how you've got to doing what you're doing, and what you focus on with your groups.
Okay. Well, I'm Gail. I'm 48 and I am a mum to three daughters, two of whom are now teenagers, and that brings its whole new set of problems, especially when it's combined with menopause. But I have run my whole life, really. I started running cross country at school. I got on the team, I think, because most of the other good runners couldn't really be bothered that day, or were probably smoking outside the bike sheds. And I was running around the field. And it kind of grew from there, really. My dad's always been into running, and he's run several marathons and triathlons and things. And it was something that me and my dad could do together. So it was like a bonding thing. And then I think it's just been something that I've dipped in and out of my whole life, because it's so easy, really. All you need is your sports bar and your trainers. When I went to uni, I carried on running, and I sort of got some of my friends into running there. And then I ran through all of my pregnancies, and then again after my pregnancies. And yeah, it's just something that I've always done because it's convenient. I really hate the thought of, having to pack up a kit and go somewhere and then put the kit on and do a sport. And I like the fact you open your front door, you put your trainers on and you go. That's always appealed to me. So it was in lockdown, really, that I started running more and more, and I think that was largely for my mental health. And it was around that time that I started to realise that I was perimenopausal. I've always really suffered with my periods. I've got endometriosis, and I have had nightmare periods my whole life. And as soon as I started to realise, actually, this is perimenopause, I was determined that I was going to try and make this part of my life better than it had been leading up to this, with regards to periods and, women's health. And so I came up with the idea that I would start a local running group for other women in a similar position, because I would go out running, and of course at that time you could only kind of go on your own or whatever. And I would see other people of my age and older running, and I thought, I'm going to start a running group. And I did that, and the local paper kind of backed me, and we got quite a lot of people running. And then we headed into second lockdown. And so I kind of paired everybody up into pairs, because you could run with one other person. And everyone sort of said it was the highlight of their week to kind of get away from their family and to be able to get out and talk about all of those things that had been kind of bothering them or worrying them with somebody else who understood and was going through those same things. And yeah, it's kind of grown from there, really. It's really inclusive. I hold several groups now, some for complete beginners. We also have a 10K group. We have a speedy 5K. Some of us did a half marathon and trained together for that last year. But it is really about being inclusive, letting off steam, and feeling better at the end of the run than you did at the beginning.
Yeah, brilliant. So what do you find? I mean, I was going to go down the route. I'm just going to go straight into it. What barriers around women getting into anything really at menopause, but particularly running? I mean, let's just get into the nitty-gritty of it.
Yeah, I think there are so many barriers, and I think this is a real problem. Just to quote some women in sports statistics, I think that something like a third of women of menopausal age are not getting enough exercise. 1 in 5 do no exercise at all, and 30% of women are less active since sort of beginning perimenopause. So it is a really big problem, and I think the saddest thing is that there's also lots of research out there that shows that women do want to be more active. So, it's something that we really need to look at. I think there are lots of barriers. I think for a start, it's a really pressurized time in a woman's life, because it can often be that time where you're sandwiched between still looking after children, and then starting to look after parents. You might also have, quite a pressurized job, and that's squeezing time from you, all of those things. I think as women, we are naturally programmed to put others, looking after others before looking after ourselves. And I think that, you know, is sometimes seen as selfish and self-care, although it's crazy because, you know, you do need to look after yourself in order to look after others. I think that's something as well. I think, you know, it's dealing with menopausal symptoms. I read something the other day that 1 in 3 women have like a health problem at menopause and perimenopause that lasts longer than a year. So it, you know, it's those kind of health things that hold you back as well. But I also think there's a lot of there's a lack of self-confidence, there's a lot of embarrassment. Your body might be changing, you might be holding weight in areas that you didn't before. I know personally I had lots of aches and pains with my joints and particularly in my feet, and that obviously impacted my running a lot because it hurt, you know, as much as it was really freeing for my mind and really good for that part of my mental health, it really hurt my feet. And so it was trying to overcome that barrier as well. I think women can feel a bit invisible and ignored. It can be very daunting for women to kind of, they've not run since school or since, you know, the 20s or 30s to suddenly go out there and put on trainers and run around their local area because, you know yourself that when you go running, you know, a few days later you'll bump into someone and say, oh, I saw you running the other day. And for some women that is just an unbearable thought that someone's seen them out running. I think a lot of women don't see themselves as runners. I have this a lot with people in the group who will say, oh, I'm not a runner, you know, oh, that's not me. And you know, it's trying to change that perception of what a runner is. And if you go out there and you run, or if you go out there and you walk, you know, you're a runner. It's not some, you don't have to look a certain way or weigh a certain way or complete a 5K in a certain amount of time. If you're out there and you're running, then you're a runner. But I think that's a real mental block for a lot of people. And I think, yeah, there's a lot of just shame around going out there and being active, which is just terrible, really. It's so sad.
How do you get people into your group? How do you how do you get them to just take that first step, really?
That's exactly what I was going to ask you.
Yeah, I have like an Instagram page, and I kind of focus a lot of the posts on that around how running can help with menopausal symptoms and how it's helped me. And I'll put stories on from women who are already in the group and how running has helped them. And I think that helps a lot because, you know, they're normal looking women in their 40s and 50s. So I think that straight away makes people think, oh, okay, she looks a bit like me. I can relate to this person. Quite a lot of it is through word of mouth locally. You know, someone will say, oh, you know, you look happier, or, you know, what are you doing? I heard you're doing running. Who do you do that with? And then they'll bring friends along. So a lot of it is word of mouth, really. And I think it's just reassuring people that they can do this. You know, with the beginners group, we start really right back at the beginning where we're running for like a minute and a half, walking for 2 minutes, and we do that and we build it up very slowly. In fact, it is a slower version than the couch to 5K because I think that so many women find that big jump up to 20 minutes just off-putting, and if they try that and they can't do it, they won't come back. So it's a much gentler approach. And because it's over a couple more weeks, it's over 12 weeks instead of 9 weeks, it means that if somebody can't come because their child's ill or they have to go and help out with, you know, their mother who's not well, then they can still come back and still pick it up, and they haven't kind of fallen behind the rest of the group. And I think that's another thing as well, that women are very nervous about coming because they don't want to hold people back. And so I make it quite clear that nobody will ever be holding anybody back, and nobody will ever be miles back at the back on their own. Someone will always be running with them. If you're the last runner, someone will be with you, you know, chatting to you and pulling you along. But yeah, mainly I think it's just word of mouth.
Yeah, I think social media is great if you've got, it's just, you look at Instagram and you know, the things that you tend to follow, that they're always very polished and they always look a certain way. And I'm thinking mainly sort of, the one that popped into my head was yoga there, and it's like it's so far removed from what yoga actually is. Seem, you know, just some very bendy, skinny. Not that there's anything wrong with that at all, but it gives this impression that that's the be all and end all, and it's the wrong message, you know. I think we were talking about it where who was saying something about the women that are promoting menopause on the telly being completely unrepresentative of
most of us.
Most of us that are in that sort of age group.
I'm never going to be like aspiring to that. It's just not possible for me. I need somebody I can relate to.
It's really interesting actually that the least polished post, the post where we finished a run and we're all hot and sweaty and red, get the most likes, because probably people can relate to those the most, rather than, you know, some kind of polished studio shot.
That's it. I mean, you do come back for a run. You should, well, not should, but when you come back for a run, frequently you will be less than your ideal.
That's totally normal.
It's totally normal. Yeah.
I follow Dr. Juliet McGrattan, who I know that you had speaking. And I love her post because she always looks really hot and bothered. And you think, you know, if somebody who I really look up to her, somebody like her who is a proper runner, as many people would think, she comes back, she's hot, she's sweaty, she's red, she's got a dog, she's got mud up her legs, and you think that's really the kind of images that, you know, you want to see, aren't they?
And when people join your groups and go out running together, do they talk about these things? Are there any conversations as you're running, like, to discuss how difficult it was to actually make that step to join or come out and overcome the barriers, or is it a bit sort of, or don't really want to talk about that?
No, I think people are quite open and they'll talk about that. I think they talk about all of those kind of issues that we feel as 40-something, 50-something women. So we'll talk about how, you know, nervous they feel, and like somebody will say, oh, well, when I go out on my own, I always wear a cap because it just gives me that extra feeling of confidence. And then, you know, then a few weeks later, they might go, guess what? I went running and I forgot my cap and it was absolutely fine and nobody looked at me. And, you know, we'll talk about things like that. And then we'll also talk about symptoms, quite often about lack of sleep and how that's affected them. So they might not have got their 3 runs in that week because they were just knackered. And like I said before, I think because everyone's dealing with the same problems, like teenage kids and aging parents, and, you know, you can come and you can really talk to someone else that's probably going through the same thing and let off steam. But we talk about all kinds of either symptom-based things to do that affect your running, or things like, you know, shoes. Like quite often they'll start running and they'll have trainers that they've dug out of the back of the wardrobe that really aren't fit for purpose, and then they start to realize that. And I have like a good relationship with our local running shop, so quite often I'll take a group of my new beginners to the shop and they'll all get gait analysis, and we give them like a discount off their shoes and a free pair of running socks, and they can't believe the difference that is actually making to their run.
So what sort of just rattle off some of the benefits that your group, you know, they start the process on day one, and they come with all these perhaps fears or misconceptions, or however you want to term it, really. And then 6 weeks, 12 weeks down the line, what are the benefits that they're getting mentally, physically? I'm just thinking, from if this goes out, and really, Gail, what I'm thinking is I'd like to put this on my profile rather than it going just into the group. To hit all, because I have quite a lot of friends or people on Facebook that are either into or want to get into running, and I think this would be a good one to kind of just, you know, maybe just spark a bit of interest in those people that have been thinking about it for a while and have been a bit worried. So benefits, rattle them off.
I think there's a massive social aspect. I think it can be very hard to meet new people because you've gone probably past being that school gate mum where you naturally meet people, and if you're not working or whatever, I think it can be quite hard to meet meet new people. So there's a massive social aspect, and as well, we've talked a lot about how you're meeting people who are going through the same thing. So there's that immediate connection even before you realize that you've got other things in common. So there's a huge kind of social aspect. I think it's that feeling of belonging as well, which is really nice, because I think so often women in this age group feel that they don't belong in sport or exercise, or, you know, particularly if they might have joined a gym before in the past, and then they go in and they feel very ostracized. And I think it's that feeling of belonging. I think it boosts their self-confidence. So many women start the course and say, I'm never going to be able to run for 30 minutes, never going to be able to do it. And that they all do, you know, it's step by step. And I think that they can then take that feeling of self-confidence and increase self-worth away to other areas of their lives. And I think that that's massively important. Obviously, it helps to increase like muscle mass and build healthy bones, which, as we know, is really, really important in and around menopause. They may lose weight. A lot of people come because they want to get into a better routine where they're, you know, they want to lose that gathering of weight that you often get around your middle in and around menopause. And I think also if they're moving more, they start to think a little bit more about what they're eating and how they're fueling their runs. And I try and I do a lot of work as well with an organisation called Harley Street at Home, which is like an online website resource for women in and around menopause, and I'm their movement specialist. So I speak again there to lots and lots of women who have not exercised for probably 20-25 years. And Nigel, who I work with there, Nigel Denby, he's a dietitian. He kind of does the nutrition side of things and I do the movement side of things. And one of the things that we talk about is that, you know, even post-menopause, you probably, you know, generally, if you're lucky, are going to live for another 20 or 30 years. So it's really, really important that you're active and you're doing weight-bearing exercise like running at this time of your life, because who do you want to be? Do you want to be that lady who, you know, is kind of chair bound and needs somebody to come in and help her because she hasn't got the strength in her body to move around independently? Or do you want to keep that independence? And I think it's kind of about that as well. So I always try and say it's not about what you weigh, it's not about what you look like, it's about strength proofing your body for these years to come. And I think that's a real benefit as well, that I think it starts to make people see what their bodies are actually capable of and what they can do. And it isn't so much about what you look like. You might not look like you did in your 20s and your 30s, and that's fine, because our bodies are supposed to change and they're supposed to adapt. And I think quite often doing the running and realizing what their bodies can do that they never thought they could helps to change that mindset a bit. And I think that that's really, really important. I think that moods, you know, it helps your mood. It really, really helps to give you much more of a buzz and a boost. You know, we often start the run and it might be raining or whatever, because, you know, I am in Manchester, and people really won't want to go, and you'll go like, come on, we all know that we feel better afterwards. And you do get that immediate boost afterwards, and everyone sort of says, yeah, I feel great, you know, I feel really good. And then, you know, on our Tuesday run, because it's a daytime run, we always go and have a drink together, have a coffee together, and that's really nice for that social aspect. I don't know. I think as well, it helps to expand women's kind of frame of reference around sport. It helps them to see, a bit like you said earlier on, that it's not just about being polished and you know, being bendy and whatever. Sport really is for everybody, and I think running is one of those most inclusive sports. We know that because of, you know, the huge numbers of people of all different shapes and sizes and ages that go to park run every week. So, you know, it helps them to realize that sport can be for them. I could go on. There's just so many different benefits, really. I as you can tell, I'm really passionate about it, and working with new runners, for me, people that haven't run before, is definitely one of the kind of highlights of my job. I love that part of it. I love getting a group of women who you can just see, you know, feeling tired and doubting themselves, low confidence, And then you'd see them literally over the weeks, they stand taller, you know, they get there, they start to do their warm-ups, they feel like they're ready for this, and you can just see them grow in confidence. And I think that's amazing, and that's, you know, running does that for you.
Do you see that translate into other areas of their lives? Do you see them, you know, the stories that they're telling in week 1 to the stories that they're telling in week 12? Do you see them kind of growing in confidence in other areas of their lives rather than just the running as well?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. And I think because we talk about lots of issues that we're all going through, we give, you know, advice. So you quite often get, you know, 8 different versions of you know, advice that you go away with, and then people will come back and say, hey, I tried that with my son or daughter or whatever, it really worked, or thanks for letting me know about that, I've contacted them, and, you know, they said they might have a part-time job. And there's loads of different things, because I think once you realize you can do something you never thought you could, yeah, of course that's going to translate into other areas. And I think it's really nice as well to know that there's a group of women there that have really got your back, because I think unfortunately it's not always like that. And I think, you know, there can be a lot of competition and competitiveness. And I think to find a group of people that are all starting from the same point of view, but from different, you know, different backgrounds and they've got different mindsets and things, I think that really helps you to take on other things that then help you to grow.
Yeah, that meeting people that you might not ordinarily meet.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, there's one lady who we run with who's like nearly 70, and, you know, when she sort of signed up, I thought, oh, she's a lot older than everybody else. And I mean, yeah, it's just brilliant. And it's really reassuring, I think, for people who are starting their menopause journey to speak to someone who's been through it and has come out the other side. And, you know, she was telling me about a parachute jump she was doing, and she was going off traveling with her daughter and doing this. And yeah, I think that's really like encouraging and inspirational, really.
Very, very inspirational to start at that age. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it just proves as well, doesn't it, that it doesn't matter how old you are. Those are the stories that you need to hear, because for me it's a case, well, if she can do it, then I can definitely do it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, she joined me quite a while ago, and then she had an injury and she was off, and she's back now. And I think as well, you know, wow, because she could have used that as an excuse to think, oh, well, maybe I'm too old, or maybe it's not for me, or whatever. She was like, oh, I've missed everyone. I've missed everyone so much. I've missed running. Can't wait to get back out there. And here we are again, which is just, you know, it's amazing.
Oh, that's brilliant. What do you see as the most powerful or effective way of addressing this thing of us as women as we get older, this barrier in sport, and thinking of ourselves as runners, and it's almost like an aversion, isn't it, the way that you're describing it, and the way I've seen it as well, of thinking of ourselves as being a runner, or being a regular exerciser, or something that we've never done before. What's the most effective way that you've seen of addressing that? Is it I don't know, I'm not going to put words into your mouth, I'm just curious to
I think it's trying to change people's mindsets so that they think about running and exercise as more as something to be enjoyed rather than a necessary evil. I think a lot of women have grown up, if they haven't naturally been sporty when they're young, they see exercise as something that they need to do quite often to burn calories.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, you know, I've got to do that so that I can do this. And it's trying to change that mindset, I think. So showing them that actually running can be for them, and they can really enjoy it, and it can be something that, you know, you don't have to run to try and reach a goal. It can be something you do for enjoyment's sake. And I think as well, you know, I know that I often try and tell myself that I'm lucky to be able to run, that so many people, you know, for whatever reason cannot run. So I should look at it as something, you know, as a bonus, really, rather than something that I have to do. If I'm having one of those days where you just think, oh, I'm tired today, or, you know, I just don't want to go out, the weather's awful. I think, but I can run, I can go out there and do it. And I think it's changing that mindset so that it's something that you kind of feel lucky to do and feel privileged to do, and something that you are able to do rather than something you have to do. I think it's trying to change that mindset, really. And I think, you know, we are starting to see it slowly, but I think, you know, the big corporations and, you know, the running shoe manufacturers and things need to start being more inclusive in the kind of people that they have in their advertisements, and they have, you know, that you see in Runner's World. And because running is really for everybody, as I, you know, try and say to the women that I work with, and when I do things like this, it's for everybody. It's not just for, you know, people in their 20s that are super speedy. It's, you know, as I said, it's this lady who's, you know, almost 70, and she loves it. And I think it's trying to make it more inclusive and trying to see that generally. And I think, therefore, you know, things like this, it's just really good to try and get that message out there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And I'm also thinking back to what you said at the beginning of when you were running through your adolescence and then university, and getting other people to run and enjoy that. And you said that it's really simple. You just need a sports bra and your trainers, and off you go. Is it still that simple? Is it still that simple for us as perimenopausal or postmenopausal women?
Yeah, I think it is, to be quite honest. You know, if
I'd probably wear a t-shirt.
Quite a lot of the issues. Yeah, probably a t-shirt. Yeah.
Sorry, you just froze.
Maybe something on your legs, you know, if you want to run in the pants. I have a lot of women who start and they have pelvic floor issues, and I'll urge them to go and speak to someone about that and sort of say, you know, it is something that is overcomable, and you don't have to, you know, be scared of running or exercise because of that, and you don't have to wear a pad for the next 40 years. You can overcome this. And I hold like groups like with my local women's physio from time to time, and they've been really popular, and I know that they've helped lots of women in the group. But ultimately, yeah, I think it is, you know, you don't need to go out and you don't need to get the full kit from Sweaty Betty or whatever. You can go and get a pair of leggings from Asda and an old t-shirt or an old sweatshirt that you've got at home, and as long as you've got, you know, a supportive bra and some trainers, yeah, I think you can just get out there and get going.
I think you're not being very inclusive at all, because you're not including the women like myself who don't need to wear a bra at all.
Well, yeah. I mean, I would love that. I'm talking from experience, but yeah.
I love that. So you just need a sports bra and trainers. I think, nah.
Well, lucky you, Kelly.
Yeah,
bars in them. I'm fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But no, I don't think you do need a lot of equipment.
No, you don't need it. You don't, do you? I mean, I look like a bag lady when I go out to run. It's literally whatever I've got to hand. You know, I have been known to go out in what I've been wearing to bed before now. Just literally rolled out of bed. The trainers, I can't believe I'm admitting to that.
I think you should really find as well.
Another thing that I would just add is, I think it's really good if you can find a local running group to join, because I think another thing that puts women off is the fear of running on their own. So I think it's, you know, especially if you're running in the evening and it's dark or whatever, I think that can really be a big barrier for women. So to know that you're running with other people in a group, for just, you know, for safety reasons as well, is really important. So yeah, I would say to kind of have a look around if you are looking to start running, to have a look around, see what local groups there are, and try a few of them, because some of them might not be a very good fit. But don't give up. Try and, you know, look what else is out there and is available.
I think there's also, just thinking of what I've heard friends and some clients as well say, that they actually quite like running in the dark, because it's a little bit of undercover, and, you know, he's going to see me whilst I'm out in the lanes or around the streets in the dark. that can be a bit appealing. And so yeah, there's the two sides to that. And also I've completely lost my thread, but it'll come back in a minute. Thinking of running in a group, that sometimes that can, I've seen that can be it's a great thing. It can be a draw, but it also can be a bit of a barrier as well. That the thing of, I need to join the gym, but I need to get fit before I join the gym. It's a similar thing with running, I think. Sometimes I need to get fit before I run with somebody because they'll be quicker than me, and all those kind of things. How do you get around that?
Yeah, I think probably I will always say to people, but you have to start from where you are now. So, you know, you don't need to start going to the gym. We start from where we are now, and that is a lot of walking. And, you know, I know that you can walk. So start from where you are now, even if you find that, you know, you can't do, you know, 6 lots of the minute and a half running, just do 4 and then walk for the rest. And especially those first few weeks that we do together, we always do it like round, like a not a track, but like a circular route in the park or whatever, so you're not going to get left behind. But again, I always say to people, it doesn't matter how slow you are, I will run with you, I will be there next to you. You're not going to be you trailing behind at the back thinking, oh, I'm just going to give up, and you're not going to be holding anybody back. Because I think, and maybe I'm just lucky, or maybe it's the way that I promote the group, that we tend, even if we obviously do have some runners who are a lot faster, but everybody seems very happy to drop their pace to run with somebody. So, you know, I have some runners who can run 5K in, you know, 22 minutes, 23 minutes, but they're quite happy to drop their pace and to see that run as one of their slower runs, so that they get to run with someone that could take 35 minutes to do the 5K. And it is very much, I think, because I've been doing this now for about 2 years, and there is a core of runners who have been coming for those 2 years. So it is about catching up with people socially, and, you know, we are like a group of friends really in many ways. So I think that people don't feel left out or, you know, struggling at the back, because we make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, it makes it sound like, you know, you go and run together. It's not a performance of how fast
it's not a performance. No.
Yeah, that's quite a different approach to some running clubs, not all, but some.
Yeah, it's not a competitive running club at all. And I have actually sort of turned people away before to say, actually, it doesn't really sound like this is going to be for you. If you want to come along and just run at a very slow, gentle pace, then please come along, or come along and see what you think. But I think you would be better off joining, you know, Sale Harriers or something like that, because I think you're looking to kind of decrease your 5K time, or, you know, do more speed work or whatever, and that isn't what we offer. So
yeah, I think it's right, isn't it? It's like you say, finding the right group that fits with where you are right now, because you can always change again as well.
Yeah, and I have had people who have joined like the complete beginners group, who've moved up into the 5K group, moved into the faster 5K group, and then trained to do a 10K, who have come all that, you know, all of those different steps. And then I have, you know, some people who just come along to the 5K group because they enjoy it and it fits in with their week, and yet they're running like, you know, fell marathons at the weekend. So it's kind of, you know, you have to just try it and see, and find your people and find where you feel comfortable. But I do really try to make sure that everybody feels like they belong, because that I think that would be the worst thing for me, is if someone came and they just hated it and felt that they weren't being supported, because then that might put them off ever running again, and that would, you know, that would be awful.
Brilliant. Angie, have you got any follow-ups to that? Because I'm just conscious of the fact that you're asking some really good questions this morning.
I'm on it with the questions.
I'm just going to dump it all on you.
It's all right. My brain's turning, but I haven't come up with any just yet. So dive in if you want to.
Okay. Well, because I wanted to just go back to And you kind of quoted some statistics at the start, and we kind of just went past them, like, you know,
Okay.
dead quick. And I just thought it might be worth just revisiting that in a little bit more detail, as best we can. I mean, statistics are statistics, aren't they, at the end of the day?
Yeah.
But that whole idea of people living with, or women living with, a condition for 20 years plus, was it a condition, or did you say?
No, it was basically, it was, I looked
living in poor health was that one, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Poor
yeah.
health, 20 years plus. And then there was the with a condition lasting over 12 months. Did they go into kind of any kind of detail about what those conditions were? Are we talking about menopausal conditions, or are we talking about
yeah, I think it was because it was talking that one of the barriers was dealing with menopausal symptoms, and then it went on to say that a third of women have a health condition that lasts over 12 months. So I assume that it was connected to menopause, yeah. And that was then putting them off, because I guess, you know, they weren't feeling great, or they were you know, having sort of medication and help for that condition, which put them off being active.
Yeah, so there's this huge disconnect then between people that have got, women, let's go over and keep saying people, but this is definitely, so we've got 30% of women less active since starting menopause. So the sort of the implication there being that starting menopause or perimenopause, however you want to phrase it, is in some way either stopping them creating the barriers, or stopping them either physically or mentally or whatever. And only 1 in 5 are active, and then a third of women 41 to 60 not getting the recommended amount of exercise. That like the government recommendations.
Yeah,
that's sort of usual. Yeah, so I mean, there's quite a big disconnect there with people that are not active because they've started menopause but want to be active, and then there's all that stuff in between, isn't there? I just wondered if they'd expanded on that in any way in terms of what, you know, I know what your viewpoint is. The research that you've read, was it similar sort of stuff that they were coming up with, or did you
yeah,
do anything
it
else?
was really
all the same. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a really good study, actually. It was a Women in Sports study, and you can access it online. I think it was done in autumn 2021, so not that long ago. And it was a follow-up to an earlier study that they had done to see whether things had changed, and things hadn't changed, basically. And yeah, it was just basically looking at the statistics of women who were exercising in and around menopause, and what the barriers were, and what people, you know, what you could do about them. And it's, you know, obviously we've touched on it here, but it is worth a read because it is more in depth, and I found it really interesting. I could always give you the link to that if you want.
Yeah, by all means send it across, because I think there'll be some people in the group that'll be interested in that. Definitely. There's some people that are kind of right on top of the research and stuff, don't we, in there? So yeah, useful. Yeah, really useful.
Yeah.
I often find that the peri and the post-menopausal issues, challenges, I don't really like the word symptoms, but it covers the breadth of it, that it overlaps with all of the life stuff. like you've already mentioned, they're getting squeezed and sandwiched between different pressures of life, different responsibilities. So yeah, I think sometimes, I don't know what the question is here, but sometimes in research, I'm not sure if they are able to account for that when they're talking about health conditions, because it can be difficult to really find what's at the bottom layer, because so much of our issues around menopause can be exacerbated by what's already going on, what's happened in the past, fears of the future, stress. It all gets really tangled together. And one of the best things, I think, is that what helps one thing kind of helps it all as well. Stress is usually at the bottom of all of those layers, whether it's a physical condition or otherwise. So yeah, what's the question there?
I think it sort of links to what you've just said as well, in some ways, that everything is very tangled in, and I think sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees. But then when you actually make one step, so for example, you know, people in the group will often say, I haven't got time to do this, I haven't got time to do that. But once they start to take those first steps into running, they then find other little pockets of time. So, you know, this week, one of the ladies said, I actually managed to get my 3 runs in this week because I worked out that when my daughter was at dancing, I could go for a run then. And I think it's kind of, once you start to make some steps, you then are able to untangle other things a little bit so that you can give yourself opportunities in other areas. And like, I can remember probably a year ago now, a lady came to me and said, I'm really disappointed. I've been running with you now for this amount of time and I haven't lost any weight. And I said, okay, you haven't lost any weight, but are you sleeping better? And she was like, oh yeah, I'm sleeping loads better. And I said, you know, do you feel better in yourself? Yeah, I feel loads better. She's saying, I feel much more confident as well. And I was saying, you know, I can tell by the way that you carry yourself, you're feeling better about yourself. And she's saying, and I just feel like I'm just more on it. And I said, well, you might not have lost any weight on the scales, but you've just reeled off all of these benefits to me. And I think, you know, that's something that we don't always necessarily take into account as benefits of exercise, because I think we're so conditioned as women to tie it in with how we look and how much we weigh. And there are loads of other benefits, you know, as you know. Did I go off on a tangent? And I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good tangent. That's a good tangent. I'm thinking how prevalent it is, how common it is that we have over the years, maybe hundreds of years, I don't know, the whole culture of health being equal, somehow equating to being smaller and losing weight, and weight being the measure of health. So I'm really glad that you've brought that point up, that this is health, feeling better about ourselves. There's so many facets to that, there's so many variables to be playing with. And
and I think that's really sad that, you know, I've got 2 teenage daughters and I just don't think they get that at all. I think, you know, they're so they get bombarded with so many images on social media about what health is and what fitness is and things like that, that, you know, for them it is about what your bum looks like, whether you've got a big bum or whether you've got, you know, your abs are showing. And it's a bit like, oh my God, sometimes I just feel like hitting my head against a brick wall, and I feel a bit like a robot because I'm always saying, well, yeah, okay, you know, but that's not really what being healthy is about. It's about being this. And, you know, I go running because I want my body to be strong and I want it to be able, you know, and I can see them looking at me thinking, oh yeah, well, whatever. But I do find that quite disheartening that, you know, even now it's still tied up with that. And, you know, this young, because my daughters are 13 and 16, my 2 oldest, even then they're still thinking about exercise, you know, and it equates to what you look like and how much you weigh. I find that very disheartening.
Yeah, that's a bigger thing to solve, isn't it?
I mean, it is. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, we probably need another week.
I was going to say, people don't take into consideration metabolic health, and you can be sort of like over the normal weight and metabolically healthy. I've worked with some people that you think are actually really healthy, and they've got numerous, because they're lean. And my niece she's 13, and they're looking at all these things on Instagram and going, oh, I want to look like that. And I went, well, so do they. They don't look like that. They're all filtered. You know what I mean? It was like back in the day when I was bodybuilding, filters and stuff like that didn't exist. You know, that was what you were on stage. You know, and it's like now, I mean, they've got all airbrushing. There's a girl on Instagram, looks amazing. She doesn't look like that. I've met her in the flesh. She does not look like that at all. And I'm like, yeah, it's like, because they've got all the airbrushing, all the fillers, and that's not health at all. You know, it's quite sad that people that's what children or the youngsters are aspiring to, the Kardashian look. God help them.
So perhaps the best, I don't know, the one of the ways that we address this is by doing what you're doing, and with Gail, just, you know, not trying to solve that problem, but just presenting another option of how you might look at health of your body, the confidence that you've got. And yeah, maybe the solutions aren't to try and battle that narrative that's been going on for forever, but just, you know, be the change that they say. That's a bit cliche, but I see that's what you're doing, and it's clearly having an impact on these ladies that are running with you.
Yeah, I think it is. Like, you know, you get the odd email or text or whatever, and you do think, yeah, it's going in, you know, it's working. And again, it's very cliche, but even if you make a difference to one person, you know, you've made a difference, and you've got them running and being more active and looking after their body and feeling better about themselves. And that's ultimately why we run, isn't it? So yeah,
definitely. And come back at the end of it and feel better than when you went out. That's
yeah.
Good. Anything else from you, Claire, Angie? No.
Done with questions. I can't think of any others.
Gail, is there anything that we've not covered that you want to say or discuss?
No, I don't think so. I think we've talked about it all. It's been really nice, actually. I didn't realise that everyone would be on the call, but it's really nice to kind of feed off each other and, you know, discuss things in a group. So I've really enjoyed it. So thank you.